Ladies and gentlemen, today I stand before you to deliver an urgent message, one that scientists around the world have been echoing. A massive volcanic eruption may be on the horizon, and the signs are too serious to ignore. Recent scientific data has revealed an alarming increase in seismic activity, unusual ground swelling, and high gas emissions near one of the world's most closely monitored volcanoes. These are all indicators that magma is rising beneath the surface, building up pressure that could soon be unleashed in a devastating eruption. If history has taught us anything, it is that these warning signs must be taken seriously. Before Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980, similar activity was observed, yet many underestimated the true power of nature. We cannot afford to make the same mistake again. The potential consequences of such an eruption extend far beyond the immediate blast zone. Ash clouds could disrupt global air travel, crop failure could lead to food shortages, and climate patterns could be altered for years. A single eruption has the power to affect millions of lives. But all hope is not lost. Scientists are working tirelessly to monitor the situation, and emergency response teams are preparing for the worst. However, preparation is not just the responsibility of experts. It is up to all of us. Residents in high-risk areas must stay informed, follow evacuation plans, and heed the warnings of authorities. This is not a message of fear, but a call to action. By listening to science and taking the necessary precautions, we can reduce the impact of this potential disaster. The time to act is now, before nature reminds us, once again, of its unstoppable force. Over the past several months, scientists have been closely monitoring one of the most active and potentially dangerous volcanoes on Earth. Their observations have led them to a concerning conclusion. There is a growing possibility of a massive eruption in the near future. Experts from leading geological institutions and volcano observatories have been tracking significant changes in the volcano's activity, and the latest data has raised serious alarms. One of the primary concerns among scientists is the increase in seismic activity around the volcano. A surge in earthquakes beneath a volcanic system is often a strong indicator that magma is moving closer to the surface. In recent weeks, there has been a noticeable rise in both the frequency and intensity of these tremors, suggesting that the underground magma chamber is building pressure. This is a critical sign that an eruption could be imminent, and it is one that scientists do not take lightly. In addition to seismic activity, researchers have recorded significant ground deformation in the area surrounding the volcano. This occurs when magma accumulates beneath the Earth's crust, causing the ground to swell or shift. Satellite imagery and ground-based measurements have revealed that the terrain is lifting at an unusual rate, an unmistakable indication that magma is pushing its way upward. Such deformations were observed before previous major eruptions, making this a cause for immediate concern. Another key factor fueling the warning is the presence of increased gas emissions. Volcanic gases, particularly sulfur dioxide, are released when magma rises toward the surface. Scientists have reported higher than normal levels of these gases escaping from the volcano's vents, further confirming that magma activity is intensifying. In some cases, gas plumes can travel great distances, affecting air quality and potentially leading to acid rain if the eruption occurs. Given the mounting evidence, experts are urging governments, emergency agencies, and residents in nearby regions to take these warnings seriously. They emphasize that while the exact timing of an eruption is difficult to predict, the patterns observed are consistent with past eruptions that have had catastrophic consequences. Ignoring these signs could result in devastating loss of life, destruction of property, and long-term environmental impacts. Scientists are continuing to analyze data around the clock, using cutting-edge technology to refine their predictions. They are working closely with authorities to ensure that evacuation plans and safety protocols are in place should the situation escalate further. The message from the scientific community is clear. This is not a false alarm. It is a real and present danger that requires immediate attention and preparedness. When a volcano is preparing to erupt, it gives off multiple warning signs that scientists can monitor and analyze. These signs are not random. They follow a pattern seen in past volcanic eruptions and provide valuable clues about what is happening deep beneath the Earth's surface. Right now, many of these warning signs are being detected, signaling that a massive eruption may be approaching sooner rather than later. One of the most critical indicators of an impending eruption is increased seismic activity, or earthquake swarms. When magma begins rising toward the surface, it cracks through rock layers, creating tremors. These earthquakes often start small, but as magma moves upward, they become more frequent and intense. In recent weeks, seismographs near the volcano have recorded thousands of small quakes, some happening within minutes of each other. The depth and pattern of these tremors indicate that magma is actively pushing its way toward an eruption. Another alarming sign is ground deformation, the physical swelling, tilting, or sinking of land near the volcano. As magma accumulates underground, it creates immense pressure that forces the ground above it to rise or shift. Using satellite imagery and GPS technology, scientists have detected rapid ground uplift in the region. In some areas, the land has risen by several inches in just a short period, which is a clear indication that magma is pooling beneath the surface. If the pressure continues to build, the crust could eventually crack open, leading to a full-scale eruption. Additionally, researchers are closely monitoring volcanic gas emissions, particularly sulfur dioxide, SO2, and carbon dioxide, CO2. When magma rises, it releases gases that escape through cracks and vents. Scientists have reported a sharp increase in these emissions, which suggests that molten rock is moving closer to the surface. In some cases, high concentrations of these gases can pose health risks to nearby residents, causing respiratory problems and environmental damage. If gas emissions continue to intensify, it may be a sign that an eruption is imminent. Another significant warning sign is changes in geothermal activity. Many volcanoes have hot springs, fumaroles, or geysers that are directly connected to underground magma chambers. When an eruption is approaching, these features often show unusual behavior. Water temperatures may rise dramatically, steam vents may become more active, and the chemistry of the water can change. Scientists have observed these changes around the volcano, indicating that the magma system beneath is becoming increasingly unstable. Furthermore, some scientists are paying close attention to strange animal behavior. While not as scientifically measurable as seismic activity or gas emissions, there are countless historical records of animals acting unusually before major eruptions. Some species have been observed fleeing from danger zones, while others behave erratically due to their sensitivity to changes in the Earth's magnetic field and underground vibrations. All of these warning signs are being closely monitored by experts who are using the latest technology to track the volcano's activity in real time. Each of these signals alone would be cause for concern, but together, they paint a picture of a volcano that is becoming increasingly restless. The combination of intense earthquake swarms, ground deformation, rising gas emissions, changes in geothermal activity, and even animal behavior suggests that an eruption could happen at any time. Scientists are urging authorities and the public to stay vigilant and take necessary precautions before it is too late. Throughout history, volcanic eruptions have followed eerily similar patterns, often displaying the same warning signs we are seeing today. By studying past eruptions, scientists can better understand what might happen in the near future and how severe the impact could be. The current situation is drawing strong comparisons to some of the most devastating eruptions in recorded history, and these similarities should not be ignored. One of the most well-documented eruptions that closely mirrors today's warning signs is the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens in the United States. Before its catastrophic explosion, the volcano exhibited months of warning signs, including thousands of small earthquakes, rapid ground deformation, and a growing bulge on its northern flank. These signs were clear indicators that magma was rising and pressure was building. Eventually, on May 18, 1980, a massive landslide triggered one of the most powerful eruptions in modern history. The explosion sent ash 80,000 feet into the atmosphere, flattened entire forests, and killed 57 people. The similarities between Mount St. Helens and the current volcano under observation are striking. Both have shown increased seismic activity, rapid ground swelling, and rising gas emissions. If history repeats itself, the upcoming eruption could be just as catastrophic, if not worse. Another historical eruption that bears resemblance to today's warning signs is the 1991 eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines. Prior to its massive eruption, scientists detected increasing earthquake activity beneath the volcano, swelling of the land, and a significant rise in sulfur dioxide emissions. Many of the warning signs observed before the Pinatubo eruption are now being recorded in the present situation. When Mount Pinatubo finally erupted, it became the second-largest volcanic eruption of the 20th century, ejecting massive amounts of ash and gases into the atmosphere. The impact was so severe that it caused global temperatures to drop for nearly 2 years. The eruption also displaced over 200,000 people and led to widespread destruction. If the current volcano follows a similar trajectory, the consequences could be felt on a global scale. The 1883 eruption of Krakatoa is another chilling reminder of what happens when volcanic warning signs go unheeded. In the months leading up to the eruption, there were noticeable increases in volcanic tremors and gas emissions, but many people underestimated the volcano's power. When Krakatoa finally erupted, it unleashed one of the deadliest natural disasters in history, killing over 36,000 people and generating shockwaves that were felt around the world. The explosion was so loud that it was heard more than 3,000 miles away, and the ash cloud caused temperatures to drop worldwide. Scientists are now seeing similar patterns in the volcano being monitored today: an increase in seismic activity, pressure building underground, and growing signs of instability. These parallels serve as a stark warning that the world must prepare for what could come next. Perhaps the most infamous eruption in history, the destruction of Pompeii in 79 AD, also followed an eerily familiar pattern. Before Mount Vesuvius erupted, the region experienced frequent earthquakes and strange underground rumblings. Unfortunately, these warnings were ignored, and when the volcano finally exploded, it buried entire cities under a thick layer of ash and pumice, preserving them in time. Thousands of people lost their lives, and their remains serve as a haunting reminder of nature's power. Today, modern technology allows us to detect the same kinds of warning signs that ancient civilizations could not, giving us a crucial advantage. The question is, will we listen to history's warnings, or will we repeat the same mistakes? By comparing the present situation to these historical disasters, scientists are emphasizing that the risk of a major eruption is not just speculation. It is based on concrete evidence and patterns that have been observed time and time again. Every major eruption in history has given warning signs before unleashing destruction, and the current volcano is following a nearly identical pattern. These past disasters teach us that ignoring the warning signs can have catastrophic consequences, and that early action is the key to saving lives and minimizing damage. A massive volcanic eruption is not just a local disaster, it has the potential to disrupt life on a global scale. While the immediate effects will be most severe in the areas closest to the eruption, history has shown that large-scale volcanic events can have widespread consequences, affecting air travel, agriculture, economies, and even global climate patterns. Scientists are warning that if this volcano erupts with the force they predict, the world could experience serious and long-lasting disruptions. One of the most immediate and visible impacts of a massive eruption is the release of volcanic ash into the atmosphere. When a volcano erupts explosively, it can send ash miles into the sky, creating dangerous conditions for air travel. The fine ash particles can clog jet engines, leading to mechanical failures and forcing flights to be grounded. This was seen in 2010 when Iceland's Eyjafjallajökull volcano erupted, disrupting air travel across Europe for weeks and causing economic losses of nearly $5 billion. If the current volcano erupts on a larger scale, the air travel disruptions could be even worse, affecting flights across multiple continents and stranding millions of travelers. Beyond aviation, agriculture and food supplies could suffer serious consequences. Volcanic ash can blanket farmlands, making soil toxic and unfit for crops. The 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia led to what became known as the Year Without a Summer, as ash in the atmosphere blocked sunlight, causing global temperatures to drop. The result was widespread crop failure, food shortages, and famine across Europe, Asia, and North America. Scientists fear that a similar scenario could unfold if this volcano erupts on a large scale. A major disruption in food production could drive up prices, lead to shortages, and create humanitarian crises in vulnerable regions. A massive eruption would also release huge amounts of sulfur dioxide, SO2, and other gases into the atmosphere, which could significantly alter global climate patterns. When large amounts of SO2 reach the stratosphere, they react with water vapor to form sulfuric acid aerosols, which reflect sunlight and cool the Earth's surface. This cooling effect can last for months or even years, leading to unpredictable weather patterns. In some cases, prolonged cooling can weaken monsoon cycles, disrupt rainfall patterns, and contribute to severe droughts in some regions while causing extreme rainfall in others. Scientists are concerned that a major eruption could trigger a chain reaction of climatic changes, further stressing an already fragile global climate system. Another major consequence of a large eruption is the potential for tsunamis and secondary disasters. If the volcano is near the ocean, an explosive eruption could trigger underwater landslides or even massive tsunamis, which could devastate coastal communities hundreds or even thousands of miles away. The 1883 eruption of Krakatoa generated tsunamis that reached as far as South Africa, killing tens of thousands of people. If a similar event were to occur today, it could impact heavily populated coastal cities, causing widespread destruction and loss of life. In addition to physical and environmental consequences, a major eruption could have devastating economic impacts. Businesses that rely on global supply chains, agriculture, and tourism would be severely affected. Power grids and infrastructure could suffer damage from falling ash, leading to widespread blackouts and water contamination. Countries heavily dependent on agriculture could see economic collapse if crops fail, and insurance companies could face billions of dollars in losses from property damage and business interruptions. A large-scale volcanic disaster could create long-term financial instability, affecting markets and economies worldwide. Furthermore, public health concerns would rise in the wake of a major eruption. Fine ash particles in the air can cause respiratory problems, particularly for those with asthma or other lung conditions. The presence of toxic gases like sulfur dioxide and carbon monoxide could make the air dangerous to breathe, forcing people to wear protective masks and stay indoors. In areas where volcanic ash contaminates water supplies, people could face shortages of clean drinking water, increasing the risk of disease outbreaks. Hospitals and emergency services would be overwhelmed, and governments would struggle to provide aid to affected populations. Given all these potential consequences, it is clear that a massive eruption would not be just a regional disaster. It could send shockwaves across the entire world. Scientists are emphasizing that the current warning signs should not be taken lightly, as the scale of disruption could be far greater than many people realize. While volcanoes are natural forces beyond human control, their impact can be mitigated if governments, industries, and individuals take the necessary steps to prepare for the worst. As scientists continue to monitor the growing threat of a massive volcanic eruption, one of the most crucial aspects of mitigating its impact lies in how prepared we are for such an event. The signs of an impending eruption are unmistakable, and the time to act is now. The key to saving lives and minimizing damage rests not only in early detection but also in the implementation of effective preparedness and safety measures. Governments, emergency agencies, and communities must work together to create a robust plan that can address both immediate and long-term needs in the event of an eruption. One of the first steps in preparedness is ensuring that accurate and timely information is available to the public. Early warning systems, including seismic monitoring, gas emission tracking, and satellite imagery, can give authorities crucial time to alert people in high-risk zones. These systems, when coupled with effective communication networks, can provide clear and immediate evacuation orders, ensuring that people have enough time to move to safety. In many volcanic regions, this can mean evacuating entire cities or towns, often on short notice. Authorities must have well-established procedures in place to alert residents through multiple channels, sirens, mobile alerts, social media, and emergency broadcasts, so that everyone receives the information they need, no matter the situation. Evacuation plans are another essential component of volcanic preparedness. These plans must be carefully designed to account for the size and scale of the disaster. In high-risk areas, local governments should already have designated evacuation routes, safe zones, and shelters mapped out. These plans need to be updated regularly to account for changes in population size, infrastructure, and other factors that might affect the efficiency of the evacuation process. In the event of an eruption, evacuation routes should be kept clear of debris, and local authorities should ensure that people can leave safely, even if roads are damaged or if ash begins to fall. In addition to evacuation procedures, emergency shelters should be prepared and stocked with essential supplies such as food, water, medical kits, blankets, and masks. Shelters should be designed to protect residents from both the physical dangers of the eruption, such as falling ash or pyroclastic flows, and the secondary effects, like toxic air. Governments should ensure that people in evacuation zones have access to these resources, whether through community centers, schools, or temporary emergency facilities. In some cases, large-scale shelters may need to be set up to house displaced populations for extended periods of time if the eruption leads to widespread destruction. One of the most overlooked aspects of preparedness is public education. Communities living near active volcanoes must be educated about the risks they face and the actions they should take if an eruption occurs. This includes understanding the different phases of an eruption and the corresponding safety measures. For example, residents should know what to do if ash begins to fall, whether it's safe to go outside, how to protect their lungs, and how to clean up ash from rooftops and windows. Education programs can include everything from school drills and community workshops to television and radio campaigns that spread critical information about how to stay safe. By ensuring that people are not caught off guard, communities will be better equipped to handle the chaos that follows an eruption. Infrastructure resilience is another key factor in ensuring preparedness. In areas vulnerable to volcanic eruptions, cities and towns must invest in making buildings and infrastructure more resistant to volcanic hazards. This includes reinforcing structures to withstand the weight of ash accumulation, improving drainage systems to prevent flooding, and ensuring that roads and bridges can remain functional during a disaster. This may also mean rethinking how to design critical infrastructure such as power plants, water treatment facilities, and hospitals to withstand the effects of ashfall and potential ground shaking. Engineering measures like these can reduce the overall impact of an eruption and allow for quicker recovery. On a broader level, government preparedness plans should include coordination with regional and international agencies to ensure that aid is delivered effectively. In the aftermath of an eruption, local resources will quickly become overwhelmed and outside assistance will be needed. Governments must have clear systems in place for requesting and receiving help from neighboring countries, international organizations, and humanitarian aid groups. This may include coordinating medical teams, search and rescue operations, and providing supplies like food, water, and fuel. In large-scale disasters, international cooperation can mean the difference between life and death, and governments must be proactive in building relationships with outside partners well before an eruption occurs. Lastly, psychological support is an often overlooked component of volcanic disaster preparedness. In addition to the immediate dangers posed by an eruption, communities will need emotional and mental health support in the aftermath. The trauma of losing homes, livelihoods, and loved ones can be just as devastating as the physical damage caused by the eruption itself. Governments should plan for long-term mental health services, such as counseling and community support groups, to help individuals and families cope with the emotional toll of the disaster. Local and national health services must ensure that resources are available to help people through the recovery process, addressing both their physical and psychological needs. By implementing these preparedness measures, ranging from early warning systems and evacuation plans to infrastructure resilience and public education, governments and communities can significantly reduce the risks associated with volcanic eruptions. It's crucial to remember that while we cannot control when or where an eruption will occur, we can take steps to control how we respond. The time to prepare is now, before disaster strikes. In doing so, we give ourselves the best possible chance to protect lives, safeguard communities, and minimize the widespread effects of what could otherwise be a catastrophic event. As we stand on the precipice of a potential natural disaster, it is more important than ever that we, as a global community, take immediate and decisive action. The growing signs of an impending massive volcanic eruption demand not only the attention of scientists and governments, but also the collective will of individuals, communities, and industries to prepare for what may come. It is not enough to simply wait and hope for the best. Now is the time to act with purpose, urgency, and a sense of responsibility to one another and to future generations. First and foremost, governments must take the lead in mobilizing resources and creating comprehensive disaster response plans. The warning signs are clear, and the clock is ticking. Leaders must prioritize funding for emergency services, bolstering infrastructure, and ensuring that communities in high-risk zones are adequately prepared. This means investing in the technology and personnel required to monitor the volcano's activity closely, as well as establishing rapid response teams that can quickly enact evacuation protocols, provide medical aid, and ensure public safety. Governments must not only prepare but also make sure that their citizens are informed, aware, and empowered to take action when the time comes. In addition to governmental action, local authorities and emergency management teams must strengthen their preparedness efforts at the community level. People living in volcanic regions should already be familiar with the dangers they face and the steps they need to take to protect themselves. Local leaders should focus on educating residents about the potential hazards, such as ashfall, pyroclastic flows, and lava, so that when an emergency arises, people know exactly what to do. This includes organizing drills, distributing emergency kits, and establishing safe zones where people can find refuge in case of evacuation. Only through a united community effort can we ensure that no one is left behind when disaster strikes. The private sector also has a vital role to play in this call to action. Businesses must prioritize disaster preparedness as part of their operational strategy. In the event of an eruption, many businesses will face disruptions, be it through damage to property, supply chain interruptions, or employee safety concerns. Companies that rely on infrastructure in affected areas should have contingency plans in place to protect their operations, safeguard employees, and resume business as quickly as possible after the eruption. For example, ensuring that critical supply chains are not solely dependent on one region and creating remote work options in case of evacuation can help mitigate the potential impact. Furthermore, industries such as agriculture, tourism, and transportation must work closely with government agencies to create resilient strategies that will help them weather the storm of disruption. Individuals and families must also be proactive in preparing for the worst. While governments and organizations can provide the necessary infrastructure and resources, the responsibility for personal safety ultimately falls on each of us. Families living in high-risk volcanic zones should ensure they have an emergency evacuation plan in place, complete with designated meeting points, communication strategies, and escape routes. A fully stocked emergency kit containing food, water, medications, and masks to protect against ash inhalation should be readily available. Furthermore, people should stay informed by regularly checking official sources for updates on the volcano's activity and being prepared to act quickly if evacuation orders are issued. The more informed and prepared we are, the greater the chance of minimizing harm and saving lives. Moreover, scientific research and monitoring must continue to be a cornerstone of global efforts to predict and respond to volcanic activity. The role of scientists in identifying and tracking potential volcanic hazards cannot be overstated. They are the ones who give us the information we need to make decisions about evacuations, safety measures, and resource allocation. Governments and private entities must continue to support the work of volcanologists, geologists, and emergency management experts, ensuring that the latest data and technologies are available to predict eruptions more accurately. We must also promote collaboration among nations, as volcanic activity can have far-reaching effects across borders. By sharing data and best practices, we can improve our collective response to future events and better protect people worldwide. It is also critical that we recognize the importance of long-term planning and climate resilience. While the immediate response to an eruption is vital, we must also focus on how to rebuild and recover in the aftermath. Volcanic eruptions can leave communities in ruin, and recovery efforts often take years. Governments and international organizations should invest in strategies that help vulnerable communities rebuild in ways that are more resilient to future volcanic events. This could mean strengthening infrastructure to withstand ash fallout, creating agricultural systems that are less affected by environmental changes, or supporting the development of early warning systems that can detect eruptions with greater precision. The long-term goal should be to create communities that are not only prepared for the next disaster, but can also thrive despite it. Finally, we must recognize that volcanic eruptions are a reminder of our relationship with the planet. While we cannot control the timing or location of an eruption, we must understand that nature operates on a scale and timeline far beyond our own. This is a humbling reality that calls for respect, preparedness, and resilience in the face of natural disasters. This crisis provides an opportunity for us to reassess our approach to disaster risk reduction, climate change, and sustainability. In the wake of the eruption, we will face many challenges, but it is also a chance for humanity to come together, rebuild stronger, and become more attuned to the forces of nature. In conclusion, the message is clear. Now is the time to act. We cannot afford to wait and hope that the eruption will not occur. The scientific community has provided us with the necessary warnings, and it is up to us to take swift and decisive action. Governments, businesses, communities, and individuals all have roles to play in minimizing the impact of this potential disaster. By working together, preparing adequately, and remaining vigilant, we can protect lives, reduce damage, and ultimately emerge stronger in the face of nature's power. The urgency is real, but so is our capacity to respond and prepare. The time to act is now, before it's too late. While the immediate threat of a massive volcanic eruption looms large, it is essential that we not only focus on the preparations and responses leading up to and during the disaster, but also on how to recover and rebuild in the aftermath. The effects of a large eruption will be felt long after the ash clouds have cleared and the lava has stopped flowing. Long-term recovery and resilience planning are crucial in ensuring that affected communities not only survive the catastrophe, but also emerge stronger, more prepared, and more adaptable to future natural disasters. The first step in the long-term recovery process is to ensure that immediate humanitarian needs are met. Following a volcanic eruption, many communities will face extensive damage to homes, infrastructure, and essential services. Emergency responders will need to provide food, water, medical care, shelter, and sanitation facilities, particularly for those who have been displaced by the eruption. As populations are relocated to temporary shelters, it will be crucial to maintain supplies of basic necessities to ensure that no one goes without. In addition to physical needs, mental health support should be provided, as many survivors will experience trauma, grief, and loss. The aftermath of a volcanic disaster can be psychologically devastating, and it is vital to provide counseling and emotional support to help communities recover emotionally and mentally. Once immediate needs are addressed, the focus must shift to restoring critical infrastructure. Many volcanoes cause extensive damage to roads, bridges, electricity grids, water supplies, and communication networks. Restoring these systems is a top priority, as they are essential for not only daily life, but also for the efficient movement of goods and services during recovery efforts. In many cases, traditional infrastructure may need to be redesigned or rebuilt to be more resilient to future eruptions. Governments, engineers, and urban planners must collaborate to ensure that the reconstruction of critical infrastructure accounts for future volcanic risks, such as reinforcing buildings to withstand ash loads, installing better drainage systems to prevent flooding from ash falls, and ensuring that power grids are more robust in the face of natural disasters. This may involve rethinking urban planning and relocating communities away from high-risk zones. Economic recovery is another crucial element of long-term resilience. A large volcanic eruption can decimate local economies, particularly in regions that rely on agriculture, tourism, or manufacturing. For example, volcanic ash can render farmland unproductive, while destruction of infrastructure and transportation networks can halt the movement of goods. In areas where tourism is a significant industry, eruptions may scare away visitors for years. As part of the recovery process, governments must prioritize economic aid and support for businesses that are affected by the eruption. This may involve providing financial relief, low-interest loans, or grants to small businesses and farmers who are struggling to rebuild. Additionally, industries that are crucial to recovery, such as construction and agriculture, should receive support to ensure that they can bounce back quickly. It will also be important to invest in new industries or sectors that may help diversify the economy and make it less reliant on vulnerable industries like agriculture and tourism. One of the most vital components of long-term recovery is the rebuilding of communities. While rebuilding homes and infrastructure is critical, it is also important to ensure that communities can come together and rebuild their social fabric. After an eruption, people often face displacement, loss of livelihoods, and separation from loved ones. Rebuilding social structures such as schools, healthcare facilities, community centers, and places of worship will be key to providing a sense of normalcy, stability, and community cohesion. Supporting local leaders and community organizations to take part in the rebuilding process will help ensure that recovery efforts are tailored to the needs of the people. Additionally, community-based disaster risk reduction strategies can be developed to empower citizens to actively participate in their own recovery, fostering a greater sense of ownership and resilience. Beyond the physical and economic aspects, environmental restoration will also play a significant role in long-term recovery. While volcanic eruptions can drastically alter the landscape, the environment can also recover over time. However, this process takes years, if not decades, and must be supported through efforts to restore ecosystems, replant forests, and clean up waterways contaminated by volcanic ash. One of the major challenges will be the restoration of agricultural lands, which may be rendered infertile or buried under layers of ash and lava. Farmers will need access to seeds, tools, and resources to regenerate soil fertility and replant crops. Sustainable agricultural practices that are more resilient to volcanic hazards should be promoted to ensure that future crops are less vulnerable to similar events. Environmental restoration projects will also need to account for potential threats from climate change, as the eruption may have already affected weather patterns in the region, making recovery efforts even more challenging. A critical aspect of long-term recovery is building a culture of preparedness that will help communities adapt to future disasters. After surviving a catastrophic eruption, it is essential that communities do not simply return to normal but instead learn from the experience and make improvements to their disaster readiness. This includes establishing and updating disaster response plans, training local responders, and investing in the continued monitoring of volcanic activity. Educational programs and public awareness campaigns should be implemented to teach communities about disaster risk reduction, first aid, and evacuation procedures. Rebuilding efforts should focus not only on restoring what was lost, but also on building more resilient communities that are better equipped to handle future volcanic hazards. Furthermore, international cooperation will play a key role in supporting long-term recovery efforts. Volcanic eruptions, particularly those of massive scale, can have transboundary effects, such as atmospheric disruptions, tsunamis, and regional economic consequences. Countries that are affected by volcanic events may need financial support, expertise, and manpower from international organizations and neighboring nations. Global institutions like the United Nations, the World Bank, and the Red Cross can provide vital resources to aid recovery efforts, while neighboring countries can offer logistical and material support. A cooperative international response is not only a moral obligation but a practical necessity to ensure that no country or community is left to face the aftermath alone. Finally, it is important to remember that volcanic eruptions are part of our natural world, and while they can be devastating, they are also part of the Earth's geological processes. As we recover and rebuild, we must continue to respect the power of nature and adapt to its rhythms. By acknowledging the risks we face and taking proactive steps to mitigate them, we can ensure that future generations will be able to live with volcanic hazards more safely and sustainably. In conclusion, while the threat of a massive volcanic eruption may seem daunting, it also presents an opportunity for us to demonstrate the strength of our resilience, unity, and collective will. The preparations, actions, and recovery efforts we undertake today will lay the foundation for a safer and more sustainable future, not just for those directly affected, but for all of humanity. By heeding the warnings, investing in robust preparedness, and ensuring long-term recovery plans, we can face this challenge head-on, protecting lives, restoring communities, and rebuilding stronger than before. Together, we can overcome the devastation of volcanic eruptions and emerge as a more resilient, adaptive global society. The time to act is now. Let us rise to the challenge and safeguard the future for generations to come.